Greetings, these 5 things I know are true. 1. Making people wait to find out who the Royal Rumble winners are gonna obviously wrestle is annoying. 2. Enough with the comedy skits, especially with the Street Profits stealing the New Day's gimmick. 3. Having Edge on NXT, but it not involving the ratings just shows that the Performance Center in NXT as a brand is pathetic. 4. Roman Reigns and Edge is the right match, even if you think it's not. And I'm Nirvana Sparkle. Sometimes wrestling can be goofy, and sometimes it can be bullshit. Let's talk about this week. As far as the week that was, let's just call it this. And plus, will be the title of this video. Decisions. Because that's all this week was based around. Edge making a decision. Bianca Belair making a decision. A decision on whether I should even care about NXT ever again. Decisions abound. But all in all, this 7 out of 10 week brought with it some surprisingly good wrestling in it. On Monday Night Raw, you had great matches aplenty, bolstered by Edge and Orton wrestling again, even though it took Alexa Bliss doing her best Silent Hill impression once again for Edge to pick up the victory. Monday night was full of great tag team wrestling, with a Lucha House Party barely and almost winning the Raw tag team titles again, but only for the dissension between the Hurt Business to continue in earnest. Bobby Lashley looks super scary and super strong, almost to the point that MVP can't control him anymore. And you bet that Matt Riddle is going to be your next U.S. champion. Just wait till the next pay-per-view. Drew McIntyre is a great babyface, but is automatically dwarfed by both Edge, Orton, and now he might be getting dwarfed by Sheamus too. Asuka is the one left out in the WrestleMania lurch. There's no direction. There's nothing for her to do. Mainly because she's just too good, and the brand split has done her no favors, as it continues to do. Charlotte Flair versus Space Mountain just continues in earnest, and yes, it's not so much Charlotte Flair versus Lacey Evans. Lacey Evans is just the benefactor. No, it's Charlotte Flair versus her own dad's hormones. And that, his hormones, are undefeated. Sorry, Charlotte, not even your godly push can help you out here. As yet again, it cost Charlotte a match. Lana is going to win a title in the WWE. Excuse me while I get my Tech Vault ready to have experiments done on my plane, or how much it will probably turn into mush once it happens. Raw is actually decent this week. It's one of their 6 shows, mainly because it's cohesive, something that Raw isn't usually known for. But the real intrigue actually came from NXT this week. The Dusty Classic continues to be the best thing in tag team wrestling, period, for both men and the females. Dakota Kai and Miguel Gonzalez get to the finals, while D Fantasma and our unlucky yet lucky odd couple team this year of rivals put together as a tag team end up beating the Undisputed Era. Tommaso Ciampa doesn't really need a Dusty Classic, but he's probably more than likely going to get one, if not for MSK being, well, in the way. The Cruiserweight title was defended in a great match, and Robert Stone continues to lose. But the main reasons you watch NXT this week is for Beth Phoenix's husband. By the way, sidebar, the fact that Beth Phoenix said nothing during her husband's segment, she was probably told to do that, which is really disappointing. I would have loved some banter about favoritism and bias between Wade Barrett and Beth Phoenix. I would have paid money for it. But sadly, no can do, didn't get that. But the promo that Edge cut on all 3 shows in 3 separate promos were great, showing why he won the event and why he's the most interesting thing all of a sudden going on in the WWE Universe. Mainly because he still got it. Heck, he never lost it. And the promos this week are proof positive of this. Even standing toe-to-promo-toe with the tribal godfather himself. And by the way, are we eventually just going to need a counter for how many God promos, God lines that the tribal godfather has been dropping on SmackDown? Because it's starting to get ridiculous now how good this new version of Roman Reigns is. My God, I've waited for so long to actually say something good about Roman, and now I'm acting like a fangirl. I can't get enough of this Samoan mafioso just conducting greatness with the mic. My God, if they book Edge and Reigns, I might have to get me a good 3-layered mask, get me a nice ticket, and find my way to the soon-to-be defunct Tampa Bay to watch me some Mania this year. I would love to do that. Trust me. But the biggest problem is the will they, won't they? The only reason why the promos are being held off is we still have another 2 months before, and sadly, 2 pay-per-views before we get to Mania. If you want these decisions, internet, to come a little quicker, then you gotta get rid of these 2 pay-per-views. It's gotta be a Rumble, straight on the Mania, and straight on the morning. That way we can get these decisions made a heck of a lot more quicker than the waiting for the obvious that we're obviously doing here. I didn't watch much of the Dirty Dogs and their new theme music. WWE theme music is just horrible. Let's just call what it is. The days of break the walls down and glass shatters are long since gone. Bring back the good theme music, please. And yes, Cesaro re-signed and then quickly proceeded to have a God match again with Daniel Bryan. Have those guys wrestle at least 2 more times, and have one of those times be for stakes. Let's say an Intercontinental title, perhaps? Because Big E is going to need a challenger. And why not Cesaro? And Daniel Bryan? And Baron Corbin? And Sami Zayn? And Shinsuke Nakamura? Yes, I'm setting up for the proverbial WrestleMania ladder match. This year could be one of the best years to get that, and it would make logical sense. Also, Sami Zayn is a crazy, out of control conspiracy believer, and for some odd reason, he's making it work, which is fantastic. And for some odd reason, Hogan was on the show. 6-year-old me would have been squealing with glee. 37 now year old me wonders, are they actually gonna book a WrestleMania segment with Hulk Hogan in it? In 2021? Where it's not just him talking? Gets the brain going, doesn't it? That was the week that was. But now, it's time to enter my throne room for my weekly opinion take. Now, I had many an idea for this week's opinion take. The Roman Reigns Edge match and how I felt about it. The fact that I watched NXT for the first time in 3 months that wasn't a takeover just for the show. There's plenty to talk about here. And I even thought of stealing the higher register segment from the Rich Eisen program. But ultimately, I came down with this. Every week on the internet, I've seen the ratings for NXT and AEW come out. And NXT has won a combined 4 weeks since the quote-unquote Wednesday Night Wars started. Yeah, it's not been good for NXT since going to 2 hours, although I think ultimately it was the right move still to do. But the question is, why? Every time they brought in legendary stars, the ratings have come up subtly. But NXT's problem is not a quality of wrestling. It's not a quality of booking. Both of those are still excellent, as proven by the Dusty Classic, and proven by stars like Dexter Lumis, Cameron Grimes, the multitude of women's wrestlers in both the main and UK brands. Its champion Finn Balor has had his career resurrected, and Karrion Kross could be a super duper star in the making. All of that is true. NXT is not a bad watch. It's not a bad brand. What it lacks, however, and why the ratings keep getting beat every week, is credibility. Let me throw you down the statistic again. There has only been 8 NXT superstars that have won WWE's major world championship coming straight up from some time in the NXT system. And that's just the males. You want to know the amount of women's champions from that? Why? It's 8. Why is NXT lowering in ratings? It's not because of wrestling quality. And it's not because they don't have young stars. What it's lacking is credibility. Credibility caused by the multitude of failures. Trust me, if you go to any other wrestling show or podcast on the internet, you usually hear about a wrestler going up to the main roster being called a demotion or a form of funeral for their wrestling careers. And that is not coincidental, sadly, because it kind of is. Other than those 8 wrestlers, all 3 members of the Shield, Bray Wyatt, Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, who is also great, and yes, I'm counting him, Drew McIntyre. NXT has not been getting gracious in the world title division. This unfortunately has a trickle-down effect. When you watch great wrestling on NXT, but know that it's going to lead to an endless mid-card vortex and a US or Intercontinental Championship ceiling, you tend to not think well of the brand you're watching. And yes, AEW is putting on more, I guess, casually compelling television, but here's the secret to their secret sauce. It's not the tables they're doing. It's not the hardcore spots. It's not running people over with golf carts. No, it's not any of that. It's credibility. Instantly. It's putting the younger stars up front, putting their newest acquisitions up front and center, almost jamming it into your brain that these wrestlers exist and these wrestlers are good. Vignettes, matches, promos, videos, just throwing younger stars at you all of the time. Combined with AEW Dark on YouTube, the push for the younger talent on All Elite Wrestling is second to none. When AEW makes a big signing or a big wrestler shows up in the Dynamite Zone, they make it known, not only for that week, but weeks before and weeks to come. I mean, Sting might be in his mid-50s, but they treated him like an indie star in his mid-20s. Ramping up his presence, even naming a pay-per-view subtly after him, and then immediately teaming him up with the young Sting of the 21st century, oddly enough. Darby Allin, our current TNT champion, which, by the way, the TNT championship is being treated better than all the world titles in WWE combined. And that's just the mid-card title. Everything in AEW is being treated and handled not only with care, but with consideration. Most of these wrestlers in the AEW system, sans only 10, sadly 9, rest in peace Brody Lee, are well-known stars, but AEW is doing the homework that NXT and by proxy the WWE main roster refuses to do. It's not about making you care about these guys, it's making them seem credible that they're on the level. Not by wins and losses, it's by generating hype. NXT, when they get a new signing into their universe, hypes their new star to the moon with vignettes, question marks, and coming soons, while also, when they finally debut, making that moment feel like an event, giving them massive entrances at takeovers, making them feel bigger than life. But sadly, when you move up to the main roster, this is not the case. You're just thrown in the blender, while the casual wrestling fan who doesn't know is just required to just know. It's the WWE underplaying who the bulk of their fan base are. They expect any casual wrestling fan to sit there and watch all hours of all wrestling all the time, when most casual WWE fans will just watch the major two like I did before getting into doing this weekly show. In which leaves whenever a new NXT star shows up kind of befuddling. The fans don't know who they are. They don't know their resume. It's like having a wrestler go to the ultimate casual job interview and they left their credentials at home. They brought their suit, they brought their suitcase, but not their resume or recommendations. Why? Because the boss didn't ask for them before the interview. The way you make these NXT stars more credible and by proxy, the brand more watchable enough to beat AEW is you start to make the wrestlers successful. And to piggyback off of last week's throne room, it starts from the bottom. But even then, you have to treat these guys and their legacies in NXT as special. You can't just bring it up every now and again when it's convenient. A character's story is just that. A story. It goes through chapters, ups and downs. But if you're going to start the storybook in NXT, but then again, rip out the entire page when they get to the main roster, then why would anybody read any of NXT's many storybooks when it's not going to matter anyway? NXT isn't losing to AEW because AEW is the better wrestling. AEW is winning because they're telling stories from the top, making their characters feel like superheroes, like can't miss events. They're making every wrestler in AEW feel like Chris Jericho. Maybe AEW is the way that we get saved from wrestlers that are made like Barbie dolls, not given stories to any of their existences. Or at least they do, until it doesn't matter. If WWE actually cares about winning the pseudo Wednesday War, They have to start caring about the children they produce. You're being a bad father, WWE, and every week in the ratings, it shows. And eventually, I think NBC Universal is going to tell you, you're no longer fighting this war because we're putting you and your mistreated children on a different night so that the world doesn't have to continue to laugh at just how bad of a father you have been. Straighten up, fly right. If you want NXT to succeed, you have to be a better father and acknowledge all of their accomplishments, not just the ones that you can make a catchphrase out of. I hope that inspired you this week to get the thinking. And that is Goofy Wrestling Bullshit for this week. Tell me what you thought down in the comment section, and here's a little call to action. Seeing that Asuka is left in the lurch for the world titles, what wrestler would you like Asuka to take on for the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania this year? Tell me down in the comment section below and let me hear your reaction. And next week, hopefully, will be just as good as this one. I hope. Until next week, find peace in your own nirvana. And remember, wrestling is a television show. Television shows are meant to be fun. Don't take it too seriously. See you next week.